Hey, welcome if this is your first time tuning into my channel, or welcome back to Through Nicky's Lens. So I am Nicky and I have one more video for you today. Having an express entry profile that is eligible is one of the most critical things to your PR journey. I personally know from experience what it is like to have my express entry profile being deemed as ineligible. And I know how frustrating and annoying it can be when you have to recreate your profile simply because you made a mistake or you potentially did not understand something in your profile. I want to talk to you today about some common mistakes, some common things why your express entry profile might be deemed ineligible. And I also want to give you some tips that can help to prevent your profile being deemed ineligible by IRCC, that's Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So let's get into the video. Once you submit your express entry profile, it goes through a computerized process where your application or your profile is assessed to see whether or not you are eligible for one of the three major express entry programs. So the express entry programs are Federal Skilled Worker Program, the Canadian Experience Class, and the Federal Skills Trade Program. There are certain requirements for all three of the programs. So, some important things for you to keep in mind is to ensure that when completing your express entry profile, that you read all the questions carefully, you answer truthfully and completely. Once your profile has been submitted and you are deemed eligible for the express entry program, you will get a comprehensive ranking score. I have done several videos previously on what express entry is and what the comprehensive ranking score criteria are and the various things that you need to take into consideration when you are in the process of preparing your express entry profile. If your express entry profile is eligible, you have a high comprehensive ranking score, you have a potential to get an invitation to apply, that is an ITA. So let's jump into the 6 common reasons, the 6 potential reasons why your express entry profile might be deemed ineligible. The first one is taking the wrong language test. There are certain language tests that are approved by IRCC for persons who want to become permanent residents of Canada to have that language ability to be able to gain the necessary scores to go into the express entry profile. There are so many things that you need to take into consideration when doing the language test. The various CLB, that's the Canadian language benchmark that you need to have for the various programs. So keep those in mind, do your research, and ensure that you do the correct test. There is also a difference between the tests for academic purposes, that's to attend a school in Canada if you require a language proficiency for your program of choice, a program of study, and there are tests that are specifically for immigration purposes. So when doing those tests, ensure you select the ones for immigration purposes and you choose to do English only or English and French. When you ignore the program requirements, that can be quite detrimental to your application, to your express entry profile. This is one of the common reasons, that's number 2, because if it is that you do not meet the minimum requirements for any of the 3 programs, then your application is at risk, your profile is at risk of being deemed ineligible. So take notes of the various requirements and see which of the programs that you qualify for. You may qualify for more than one of the programs, and your invitation to apply will be issued to you based on the draw at that time. So if you qualify for both Federal Skilled Worker Program and the Canadian Experience Class, you will know which of the 2 programs you have been invited under for your permanent residency application to be submitted. A bonus here in relation to ensuring that you make notes, you take into consideration the program requirements, is the fact that one of the minimum requirements for the Federal Skilled Worker Program is to have at least secondary education. For express entry, this is necessary. So take note of that and ensure that you include your secondary education in your profile. So submitting the wrong primary occupation. And this is also an important thing to keep in mind. Your primary occupation is crucial to your eligibility. So to give you an example, for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, your occupation must be skilled, full-time, continuous for at least a year in the last 10 years, and selecting the incorrect or invalid occupation will make your profile ineligible. So whichever primary occupation you're thinking to utilize in your express entry profile, make sure you have enough years of work in that occupation if it is that you're going to select it as your primary occupation. What some persons can do, put that as your primary or foreign work experience as your primary knock if it is that you have several years of work experience and in that occupation, and not necessarily if you're in Canada and you have less than 1 year of full-time work experience, you do not put that Canadian job as your primary knock, although it is your current job. If you have insufficient funds in your profile, this can make your, and this is point number 4, this can make your profile ineligible. The Canadian authorities, the government needs to see that you can, when you come to Canada, you're able to settle and not be dependent on any services or the government for any of your financial needs. So having proof of funds is essential for at least the Federal Skilled Worker Program. At least that's the one I'm sure of. And for the Canadian experience class, once you have at least 1 year of full-time or part-time equivalent of Canadian work experience, you do not need to show to IRCC proof of funds when you get an invitation to apply and you are submitting your PR application. However, because the system is set up to accommodate information for the 3 programs under the express entry system, if you do not put that you have more than the minimum amount of money that is required for you alone or you and however many dependents you have, your profile will be deemed ineligible. The recommendation is to put several $1,000s more, at least 10% more of the minimum that you need. I will insert a table that indicates how much money that you need for one person if you're a single applicant, for 2 persons if you are you're in the profile and you have 1 dependent, 2 dependents, and so forth, so that you can have an idea of the minimum amount that you need to put in, but be sure to put more than the minimum just in case there is an increase in the amount of proof of funds that you need to have in your profile, and that change is done within the 1 year that you're allowed to have an express entry profile in the pool. And if there is a change, an increase, then you having more than the minimum amount, that increase happens, your profile will not automatically be deemed ineligible. If that happens, or in any case when your profile is deemed ineligible, you will have to recreate that profile, and it takes a long time sometimes to have that done, so prevention is better than having to redo. Point number 5, having expired documents can also cause your profile to be deemed ineligible. So there is certain documentation that you need. 2 primary ones, if not the only 2 documents, would be your language proof. That is your results document, either from CELPIP or IELTS or whichever other of the language tests that Canada accepts to prove your proficiency in English or French. And the second document that you need to ensure is valid at the time of your application and also at least for a year that you remain in the pool is your educational credential document. Say, for example, your WES evaluation of your educational qualification. So for the language test, it's valid for 2 years, and for your educational credential assessment, that's valid for 5 years. So be sure that, as I mentioned, if it is that you're submitting your application, that you have the full validity period of at least 1 year when you're submitting that express entry profile. Common reason number 6 is changes in your circumstances. So your express entry profile is valid for 1 year at a time. Once that expires, you can always, if you did not get an invitation to apply, you can always recreate or go back into the pool by creating another profile. Your age is one of the things that is considered as a change in your circumstance. If you did not already know, every year that you have a birthday, you will lose points. So there is a minimum score that you need to have in which you are eligible to be in the express entry pool. So if it is that you age out of the system or your age, because you increase in age, you lose those points, your express entry score keeps dropping, that can make your profile ineligible. So the essence of it is that you need to go into the pool as early as possible once you meet the minimum requirements and you are in a good enough position to potentially get an invitation to apply. So there are certain tips that you need to bear in mind to prevent your express entry profile from becoming deemed as ineligible. So to match the common reasons why an express entry profile is deemed ineligible, there is a tip. Tip number 1, double check that you did the correct language proficiency test. You did the correct test, a test that is accepted by IRCC, as well as the correct version of the test. So as I mentioned earlier, there's an academic version, there's a version for immigration, as well as a version for professional reasons, so to get employment or so forth. Ensure you do the correct test as well as the correct version of the test. Review the program requirements and ensure that you meet the minimum eligibility for that particular program that you believe that you meet. Selecting the primary occupation that is correct, that is based on the minimum requirements for whichever program that you qualify for. As I mentioned, for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you need to have full-time employment or at least employment for 1 year. It could be full-time or the part-time equivalent to qualify for the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So ensure you select the correct primary NOC code and not a NOC code that you don't have enough work experience in. Although it might be your current job, that is not generally the reason why you choose that occupational code as your primary NOC code. Tip number 4 is to overestimate your proof of funds. So ensure you have a buffer figure, and actually have that amount of money in your account to show that you meet the proof of funds requirements. So once you get that invitation to apply for PR, if it is that you need to show proof of funds, you will have to show your documentation. So it could be your bank statement or whatever other documents that IRCC accepts as proof of funds, which is liquid funds or so forth. Ensure that you have that amount that you stated in your profile that you actually have. So set that cushion just in case there is an increase in the figures for the minimum funds that you need to have for the amount of persons in your express entry profile. Monitor the validity of your documents. Keep a check of when your documents will expire and ensure that you have more than enough time left on that document for the duration of the time that you will be in the express entry pool. Stay proactive. That's tip number 6. So anticipate any potential changes that might apply to your current situation and do whatever it is that you can do to keep your scores above the minimum that is required to stay in the express entry pool and to ensure that you have a good chance of getting an invitation to apply. I want to thank you so much for sticking to the end of this video. If you have not already done so, please remember to subscribe to my channel. Hit that post notification bell so that when it is that I post a new video, you will be notified and you can watch that video right away. Like the video and share it with someone. I am on the journey to 1,000 subscribers. I would greatly appreciate your support in getting me to 1,000 subscribers. If you have friends that are interested in Canadian immigration content, share my channel with them. Share this video with them. If you have not already subscribed and you continue to come back to watch my videos, consider subscribing today. Thank you so much for making it through Nicky's Lens, and I'll see you in my next video.